Chapter 5. Quilting a Blanket. My mother was preparing to design a pattern from an old blanket that we were using. The design on this blanket was practically all torn. Only one quarter was really worth redesigning into 4 parts. Mother told me that when the design was completely torn or faded out, it would be lost. This blanket was handed down from her great-grandparents, and it was hers when she was a little girl. She passed it on to my sister, but she died when I was 1 year old, so I had the blanket. Mother said it was about time to have another one of my own, and she described the design of an ohelo berry. When I was visiting my grandfather at Pahoa, he took me with him to the Kilauea crater, known as Halima'uma'u, where the fire was beautiful when you looked down into the crater at night. It was as if someone were drawing a picture, and the scenes changed all the time. When we were walking back to the wagon, he picked up some berries and showed me the ohelo berry. This was Pele's favorite fruit. He told me not to eat it as we left the crater to go home. Mother said the design on my blanket was the kapa ohelo o Pele. To cut the design on a paper the size of a large bed, she pasted newspapers together the size of the bed and folded it into 4 quarters. She designed the ohelo branch with the berries on it. In the center, she cut a quarter of a circle. When the newspaper was open, there was the ohelo branch with berries on 4 sides and a round circle in the center. This circle would be a red ball of fire. To cut the design on a yellow sheet, she folded the sheet into 4 quarters, then set the pattern on the folded sheet and traced it on. When it was cut out, the yellow design was set on a percale sheet and basted on. When that was done, she got another sheet of Indian head material, unraveled a roll of cotton on this sheet, and placed the finished pattern on it. Both sheets were then basted together, and both ends were tacked, each end to a round pole. One end was rolled to 3 quarters of the sheets, and the other end was just 1 or 2 turns. It was then set on a wooden horse with holes and held with wooden pegs. The opening of 1 quarter of the sheet on the wooden horse would be the start in quilting the blanket. She usually had about 3 other mothers who came in to help. In quilting, they followed the outline of the pattern about a ½ inch from the design and continued quilting a ½ inch from the first line, then a ½ inch from that, and continued on in the same manner until the outer edge of the blanket was reached. After the first line of quilting, they usually stopped to rest and gossip about the village happenings. To quilt, they sat on the floor with one hand above and the other below the quilt, to feel the needle touch the tip of their fingers. Then the needle was turned upward and down again. The height of the horse was about 2 feet. It took about 3 months to finish a blanket. Almost every day the mothers would come to help, and when they didn't, Mother would quilt alone. One afternoon, I came home late as I was swimming with the children at Waiakolea. One of the mothers told me in a frightened voice that a haole man was there looking for young children. He disappeared in back of the Protestant church, and she was glad we were all safely home. I looked at my mother, and she said the same thing. I was frightened and did not ask any more questions. The rest of the children waited for their mothers to finish and left for home. That whole week after school, we all went straight home to our chores. I always asked my mother if she had seen the haole man. She shook her head and answered in the negative. As the weeks passed, no haole man appeared, and as time went on, the incident was forgotten until we took advantage and went up the mountain to pick mangoes and mountain apples. Then they started the story about some haole men. This time they said they were on their horses with ropes and they would lasso us and take us away and eat our hearts, and that these men were sick people looking for young children's hearts for their cure. As I grew older, I began to laugh at these tales, but still my mother would not give in and tell me that she was serious. But in later years, she admitted that it was the only way to keep us home to do our chores and homework. One afternoon, as I was doing my homework, the mothers were talking about Aumakua, something about the guardian angel. They were speaking Hawaiian, and I understood explicitly. All of them had different Aumakua, and some even believed in dogs. My mother said her Aumakua was the family of Makanui, the owls, chosen by my great-grandfather, whose name was Makanui, which means big eyes, who guarded her while going from place to place and warned of expected danger. To me, this was like a fairy tale in the storybooks, but I did not ask any questions as it would be impolite to do so. When all the mothers left, I asked if it was true, and Mother said yes. Sometimes during the summer on vacation from school, I went to Pahoa to see my grandparents. I left Kalapana after dark. There were a few passengers on the wooden wagon. The driver was Chinese, and he held his reins that guided the two horses and had his left foot on the brake just in case he had to stop. All we heard while rolling on a loose rock road were 4 iron straps and the 2 horses strutting. Their shoes made a sound like an inverted cup striking a loose stone. The road wound through the forest until it reached the cane fields, and after that, we were near the town of Pahoa. The moon was full and bright at the time, about 9 o'clock. Looking into the horizon, I saw stars falling from the sky, and also saw one owl flying alongside of the wagon for miles. I did not pay attention until one of the passengers, an old Hawaiian woman, asked, "Whose guardian angel is this?" She also said it was not hers, so it must be mine, and that it must be a wandering guardian angel, as the owl flew about 10 miles with the wagon, and as we neared Pahoa, he flew off. I told the incident to my grandmother, and she explained that it was our Aumakua, or guardian angel, who would protect me and warn me in case of danger. Then I said that maybe my mother had asked the Aumakua to protect me. I also told her about the falling stars, and she said that when they fell into the forest, some of the trees burned. When my grandmother was a little girl in Kona, she saw it happen, and her father, with some other Hawaiians, walked the slope of Hualalai and waited until the fire burned itself out. It took days, and when they tried to pick up the rock, it was still hot. They waited until it was cool and brought it home. These rocks, or meteorites, they claimed, had magic power. Her father kept it for some time, then lost it or someone had stolen it. The following day, we left Pahoa in the afternoon and had trouble with the wagon on the way. The back spring snapped, and the wooden body rested on the wheel of the wagon, so the driver had to stop to make temporary repairs. It was dark when we finally started on our way again, just about out of the forest. This place was known for its fireball rising between trees and then floating high above only to disappear. The Hawaiians called it Akua Lele, the flying demon. I was frightened, but the driver said it was nothing to worry about. He said he saw it all the time and nothing happened. Just the horses would get jittery. We reached Kalapana about 10 o'clock, and I was glad to get home but did not want to talk that night and waited until the next day. In the morning, while my mother began her quilting, I sat alongside her and spoke of what had happened going and coming home. First, she said, "You brought some pork that has been roasted, and a bottle of okolehau, or Hawaiian gin distilled from fermented tea root. These are the things that the Akua Lele wanted. Did you throw or offer?" I did not know what to do, and she never told me. Then she asked me, "Did you see an owl flying in front of the wagon?" This I remembered, but when the wagon broke down, I only saw the Akua Lele. The Chinese driver said that it was the gas from an old dead tree. This was not China, and the Akua Lele always liked to be given something. But since the owl was there, Mother said that was the reason I was protected. This was what she was taught as a child, but she did not really believe it as she was Catholic, although it was hard not to. She warned me not to believe, because it was not good. But I did not understand. She said that if I believed and practiced and broke the ritual rules, my punishment would be death. I was too young then to make a decision. I listened to Mother, but as time went on, I forgot about it. One sunny day when a few mothers were quilting and gossiping about the day's happenings, I came home from school, and it seemed that one of the mothers' husband was feeling high from drinking at his friend's house. He was a big strapper of a man, 6 feet tall and weighing about 200 pounds. His wife was a small woman, not more than 5 foot and weighing about 100 pounds. Her eyes were very sharp, and she looked mad. She tried to cool him by telling him to go to the back of the house and sleep it off, and they both would go home. But he insisted that she go home then. My mother intervened and said she could go home. But she insisted that he would give her a hard time, and then she would use her art of lua on him, and he would cry like a baby. I heard her say this, but paid no attention. He stood up and grabbed her by the arms and pulled her out from the quilting horse, which made her fall on one of the mothers. This made her angry. She said in a soft voice, "Papa, don't do this to me. Let's you and I go home now." He was still mad and did not hear what she had said, so he grabbed her again. This time, she was so fast in resisting him that she grabbed his arm, and with one pull and twist, the big man went down as if lightning had struck him. He laid on his back with one arm paralyzed and couldn't make any move. Every time he tried, he cried out for help. I was stunned to see this kind of a fight. The wife was calm and went back to her quilting. I watched for some time. The husband began to ask forgiveness and for her to release his arm. She wouldn't do anything, so Mother asked her to do what he asked and take him home. She stood up and walked over to her husband, and with one fast twist, released the pressure of the arm. She then massaged his arm a few minutes and pulled him up. He stood up sober and quiet, kissed her, and asked her forgiveness, and they both walked home. We were all stunned except my mother, as we had not seen this fine art of self-protection. My mother explained that this art was taught to the royal family by the commoner. When she was a little girl, she had seen her great-grandfather teaching the art of lua to the royal family. The place was taboo, but she sneaked in the back and watched. The chiefs were taught this art for self-protection. It was the art to lock and unlock both arms or legs by paralyzing the nervous system. All I can say is that the art of lua is dangerous, but is good to understand for personal protection. By this time, the blanket quilting was almost completed. The last day came, and the great work of quilting stopped. It looked beautiful and well quilted. The stitching and spacing were even. You can judge by the quilting of a blanket whether it was done by a veteran or by a new hand. The ends and sides still had to be sewed, and this was my mother's job. After lunch, Mother began to lay plans for the big day of the showing of the blanket and partaking in the luau. After all was said and done, she thanked all the mothers by kissing each one before they left for home. The next day, she took the blanket from the horse and started sewing the 4 sides. It did not take long. She had an old Singer sewing machine that she laid on the floor, with my helping to hold the part to sew and trim. She turned the wheel with her hand. It did the same work as a 20th century machine. I put the horse and the poles away until the time when Mother would have another blanket to quilt. When she completed sewing the ends and placed the blanket on the bed, it was beautiful. The background of the blanket was a white Indian head. The front was a white percale with a yellow Ohelo o Pele design. In the center, the design was a round red cloth, 6 inches in diameter, representing the fire Pele. She folded the blanket and put it away in her sandalwood trunk. This trunk was Father's gift to her in memory of how he was hijacked to Hawaii on a Chinese ship.